In a world of swords and magic, a young man realizes the grim truth of his situation. He and his party were navigating a dungeon when a teleportation trap cast them into its deepest reaches. There, they met the true boss, a superclass monster, a hooded figure known only as the Executioner. He knows this story. He is Waka, and the girls before him, one on the ground, another in a large hat, are his party. He understands what is about to happen. A memory flashes with violence. The Executioner's scythe swings, and the girl in the hat cries out Waka's name a final time as the blade slices through her. He watches, helpless, as her blood splatters across his face. He collapses, groaning in pain and despair. In the background, the rest of his companions are cut down with brutal efficiency. The Executioner looms over them, speaking with cold amusement. It states that while it could kill them in a single blow, it finds it more entertaining to toy with them. It declares that from now on, it will summon countless monsters without using its own overwhelming power. The horrific memory continues to plague him, being torn apart while still alive as the girls of his party were devoured and slaughtered around him. He laments that in his 17th year, since being reincarnated into this world, he should have realized sooner and turned back. He sits with the long-haired girl, explaining his terrible realization. He has finally understood that this world is based on a source material, a pre-written story, and they all have roles to play within it. She looks toward the looming Executioner as he continues. Their enemy is destined to be defeated by the story's protagonist. His party was merely a prelude, a disposable group meant to showcase the villain's power. They were never meant to win, survive, or even escape. His voice cracks with despair. It's impossible. They stand no chance, just as the source material dictates. As he surrenders to hopelessness, the girl suddenly embraces him tightly. No, she whispers, refusing to accept his fate. Waka, you can't die. She pushes him toward a companion, pleading for them to run. But as she urges them to escape, her expression shifts to one of pained confusion. Clutching her head, she stammers that something is different as a strange vision flashes in her mind. A young boy kneeling before a brilliant light. Her face streaked with tears, she apologizes profusely to her fallen comrades, Eurytia and Atri, and to the wounded Waka. She cries out that it's all her fault. From the ground, Waka looks up in a daze, the word story echoing in his mind. He clenches his fist, rejecting the outcome. He thinks that while the fate of the others might not matter, this girl deserves to find happiness. Getting to his feet, he turns his back on the scene. He already knows how this creature is supposed to be defeated. According to the story, the protagonist is meant to appear and vanquish it within 3 pages. The flower girl rushes to support him, calling his name with concern. He insists he is fine, but admits that he could not accept the complete annihilation of his party. A bloody, determined grin spreads across his face. He declares that he will not stand for a bad end just because the original story demands it. He vows to utterly destroy the monster before he dies. In a burst of energy, he shatters the glowing magical restraint binding his arm, startling the flower girl with his sudden display of power. He charges forward, ignoring the desperate pleas of Eurytia and the flower girl for him to wait. A defiant roar escapes him as he rushes toward the enemy. His attack, a thrown projectile, collides with the Executioner's massive scythe in a violent explosion of force and debris. At the same time, another warrior prepares to enter the fray. Gripping his sword, he reflects that for over 10 years in this world, he has honed his swordsmanship to eliminate anything that deviates from his own vision. He settles deeper into his stance. He leaps toward the Executioner. He feels no pain, no fear. His path is set. In this moment, on the verge of death's approach, he will pour all of his remaining strength into a single strike. His eyes widened as his blade met the Executioner's scythe in a deafening clash of steel. He pushed forward, sparks flying as the 2 fated opponents locked weapons in a maelstrom of power. The world dissolved into a blinding flash of white light. Sometime later, Waka's eyes fluttered open. He was in an unfamiliar bed, confused. He wondered where he was. His gaze drifted to the doorway, where a woman in a large witch's hat stood. He recognized her as his master and asked what had happened, then questioned the stern expression on her face. She cried out his name and rushed toward him, but her foot caught on something, sending her tumbling forward onto the bed with a yell. The impact sent him sprawling onto the floor. He tried to catch himself, but his body felt unbalanced and weak. He quickly turned to help her, asking if she was all right, but a strange sensation stopped him. He wondered aloud what was happening to him. She apologized, urging him not to push himself, insisting that she was fine. Back in bed, he admitted that he couldn't remember the previous day's events clearly and that his body wouldn't move properly. She listened with a worried expression, then gently prompted him to check his left leg. As he looked down, a horrifying realization struck him. He could no longer see out of his right eye. The memory flooded back in a torrent. The dungeon, the brink of death, the moment he was nearly killed by the predator. He was suddenly aware of his role and theirs. The realization stemmed from memories of a past life in a place called Japan, where he had read a dark fantasy manga, the original work, that detailed their world. It was a story where the hero was never granted a happy ending. He remembered its grim nature. In that story, men and women, main characters and minor ones alike, were all mercilessly tormented and scattered without exception. The memory was interrupted as the protagonist burst into the room, asking urgently for Eurytia and Atri. The flower girl replied that they were out shopping, but her attention was immediately captured by Waka. Calling out to her senpai, she watched as he suddenly collapsed to the floor. She then turned and embraced the protagonist, overcome with relief that he was all right, admitting how deeply she had worried. As the hat girl knelt by Waka's side, Yuritia looked on, her expression mirroring the same profound concern. The flower girl apologized, assuming his concern was for an injury she had sustained. He gently told her not to worry about his own body, then realized with a somber expression why she was so anxious. She had just seen a companion lose an eye and a leg. He reflected on his actions. In his attempt to avert the full tragedy of the original story, he had still inflicted a trauma upon them by forcing them to face a mid-level boss. It was a gruesome sight he never wanted them to see, but he felt a sliver of relief that his precious companion had at least survived, escaping a much worse fate. He looked at the three women, the flower girl, Yuritia, and the hat girl, and spoke with firm resolve. He told them not to worry. If protecting them meant bearing every curse in the world, he would do it. He assured them, "I'm okay." For them, it was the first time they had ever heard such words from him. That single statement, delivered after a battle that had nearly cost him his life, was enough to completely shatter the resolve that had been forming within their hearts. Later, the mood in the room had changed. The protagonist sat on the floor near a bed as the hat girl and Yuritia knelt before him. Standing back, the short-haired girl observed the peculiar, sleepover-like atmosphere that had taken hold. Suddenly, the hat girl threw herself at him, clinging tightly. "I'll never let go," she cried. "I'll stay with you forever." She pleaded with him not to abandon her now that he had saved her. Looking down at the distraught girl, he quietly addressed her as master. As he dealt with his master's emotional plea, another of his companions stepped forward. With a gentle but firm smile, she told him that he no longer needed to push himself. From now on, she insisted, he should leave everything to them, assuring him they would not allow him to suffer needlessly again. The flower-adorned girl quickly added her own vow, declaring that she had already decided to dedicate her body and her very life to him. She was prepared to die for his sake. The protagonist tried to refuse, telling them to stop, but his words were lost in their fervor. Sometime later, he jolted awake in a bed inside a church-like building. His three companions were gathered around, silently watching him sleep. A chilling thought surfaced in his mind. The entire party's atmosphere had become grim, as if they were all afflicted by a shared sickness. In the town of Dungeon Cowcell, near Lurdle, a young man named Waka was recovering. He lay in a hospital bed run by the Holy Church, having been gravely wounded in a battle against a creature known only as the Predator. As he regained full consciousness, a startling realization dawned on him. He had been brought into the world of a dark fantasy manga he'd read in a previous life. He recalled being told that the story's original protagonist was the one who had dragged him here. The memory of that story was grim. It was a world far too bleak for a happy ending. He had already lost his left eye, a detail that matched the tragic plot he remembered. As he wondered what to do next, he felt a weight on his chest and looked down to find a young woman sleeping soundly upon him. He recognized her as Lullywold, his magic master and the party's elder. Knowing her tendency to be forward, he remained still. She began to stir, murmuring that she would sleep with Waka. He knew that if he wasn't careful, she might do something shameless. At that moment, the door creaked open. Yuritia entered, calling for her senpai, but stopped short at the sight before her. Looking at Waka, she asked if he had slept well, her expression strained. She gently warned him not to overexert himself. Her face then hardened with a frightening resolve. She vowed to herself that she would never allow this to happen again. From now on, she and the others would handle everything. She would become stronger, strong enough to support him no matter what. Her determination manifested as action. In another room, Yuritia was now trying to wake the long-haired swordsman, also her senpai. She wished him good morning, then gently shook his shoulder to rouse him. Nearby, Lullywold was also waking, groggily complaining that it was morning already. Yuritia turned to her, telling her to get up, and chiding that the party's eldest and youngest members were behaving the same way. The swordsman sat up in his bed. Yuritia asked if there was anything he could do today. He thanked her, replying that breakfast would be enough for now and assuring her that he wouldn't be a burden. He turned his head slightly, revealing a bandage wrapped over his left eye. He insisted he was fine for now, but admitted that he was still getting used to his body. Resting in his hospital bed, Waka attempts to reassure the blonde woman, telling her not to worry about him. He insists that he's fine, remarking that it's a fact he's been cared for since he was 13. She immediately refutes this, stating firmly that she does care, because it's only natural that she would. Her expression hardens with resolve. She declares that she absolutely refuses to let him die so recklessly and forbids any more foolishness. Worried that he might be gone the next time she sees him, she vows to become stronger to protect him. She then asks what she can do for him, admitting that she is scared. He remains silent as she forces a smile, her eyes betraying her fear as she asks again what she can do. Waka notices her strained expression. In the background, Yuritia helps Lullywold out of her own bed. His thoughts drift. He knows his eye is gone and that the healer needs more water, and he finds himself wondering if this woman is merely a non-player character from the game. As his party members prepare to leave, Yuritia encourages a groaning Lullywold to get ready. At that moment, A sharp, stabbing pain erupts in Waka's stomach, causing him to double over. The pain subsides, and his thoughts turn to another Eurytia. He recalls her as a dependable, though not overprotective, 13-year-old swordswoman who had joined his party, eager to become his apprentice after witnessing his skill with a blade. He reflects on his own abilities, acknowledging that he was never a genius swordsman like others his age. Because of this perceived lack of talent, his older brothers had apparently given up on his swordsmanship on 2 separate occasions. Before he can dwell on the past any longer, and before the healers can return, a sudden, violent convulsion racks his body. He cries out as he is thrown from his seated position on the bed. He hits the floor, gasping and confused. A horrifying realization dawns on him as he looks down. His left leg is gone. A wave of dizziness from blood loss threatens his consciousness. Just then, the door flies open and the blonde woman rushes in, shouting his name in alarm. She freezes, her eyes wide with shock at the scene before her. Still on the floor, Waka tries to downplay the situation, telling her to wait and that he just stumbled a little. Ignoring his words, she rushes forward and pulls him into a desperate embrace. Through tears, she asks what happened, calling him a foolish apprentice for attempting something so reckless after she told him to rest. As she holds him tightly, Waka can only utter a single word, "Master." He is met with the frantic cries of his master, Luluald. She insists he shouldn't be alone, that his wound isn't even closed, and that she must call for his sister immediately. Stunned by her panic, he tries to reassure her, stating firmly that he is fine and that she has no reason to worry. He tries to explain, shifting on the bed. He tells her that his left leg still feels like it's there, a sensation he's getting used to. He admits that he often forgets and tries to stand on it, as he always has, which is why he sometimes falters. He dismisses it as something he just needs to adjust to. His attempt at reassurance fails completely. Luluald's face crumples as she begins to cry, repeating his name and apologizing over and over. Confused by her reaction, he asks why she is the one apologizing and why she is acting so distant. He questions if she isn't sad for him. He continues, his voice calm as he looks towards the window. He confesses that, more than anything, he never expected to survive at all. His mind drifts to the battle. He had protected his comrades and saved a life. The cost was his right eye and his left leg, a price he had accepted. Now, he was simply at peace with that fact. This sentiment, however, only deepens his master's sorrow. She breaks down completely, sobbing that she's sorry. It's her fault, she cries, because she was the one who accepted that fateful request. She laments that she is useless, unable to do anything to help, while he suffers so grievously. Her apology leaves him utterly bewildered. "Why are you sorry?" he asks, his expression shifting from calm acceptance to shock. He abruptly points out the window, his focus suddenly elsewhere. A screw seems to be loose, he observes, not on anything nearby, but on the church steeple in the distance. In a sunlit room, Waka awakens, stretching as he sits up in bed. He murmurs that he feels like he's been in bed all day and that he wants to get some training in. As he lies back down, his thoughts drift to the past. He recalls the grim sight of the executioner looming over him and a defeated Luluald. He realizes that since that day, his words carry more weight, and telling his master and the others what happened would only cause them to worry. He stares at the ceiling, consumed by the guilt of not being able to protect his companions, who were left with lasting injuries. He questions this feeling and what he should do now. Gazing at his bandaged left eye, he wonders if he can ever return to his duties as a swordsman with his right arm and leg in their current state. Having dressed, he stands by the window, reflecting on his life. He came to this world as a nobody, but had managed to live peacefully as a swordsman. However, he now understands this is a dark fantasy world, and to survive, he must defeat his enemies without hesitation. He resolves that if his limbs still function, he will start over. His thoughts are interrupted by a woman's voice. He looks up to see a tan-skinned woman with light blonde hair leaning over him, calling his name. He jolts upright, startled, recognizing the woman as Atri. The young Eurytia is also in the room, having just woken him. Atri reassures him that she was just trying to wake him and that she's all right. Flustered, he tells her it's embarrassing and that she could have called for the sister or his master. Atri dismisses his concern, stating that he should leave things to her, as it's her duty to look after him. As she speaks, he notices that for a companion, her level is quite high. She explains that she is Atri, a heavy warrior from the Asentu fighting tribe. Her attention then shifts to his leg, and she asks if it still hurts. He confirms that it doesn't, as it was treated with divine magic, leaving no pain. He then asks about her own leg, wondering if it can bear her weight now that it's healed. She affirms that it can, much to his relief. He leans back, contemplating the situation. He acknowledges that both Atri and Eurytia are competent fighters. In his current state, he feels he would only be a burden. He concludes that for the time being, he will not fight. He lay on the bed as Atri leaned over him, her expression firm. She declared that if he felt they couldn't be together, then she would never, ever leave him behind. She continued, explaining her reasoning. She had failed to protect him, allowing him to be grievously injured. Because he had saved her life, she felt a debt that could only be repaid with her own. This, she explained, was a sin greater than any the gods would punish, a teaching passed down from the elders of her tribe. On the other side of the bed, Eurytia added her own vow. She promised to dedicate everything to him, her flesh, her blood, every last fragment of her soul. She had resolved to live and die for his sake, and urged him to be at ease. Her determined face was reflected in his wide, unbandaged eye. Overwhelmed by their intense declarations, he managed a tearful thank you for their concern. Atri then asked if she could pounce on him, but he quickly refused, insisting that was not the right course of action. The door opened, and the woman with short blonde hair appeared. Noticing Atri, she announced it was time to go shopping. She bid Waka farewell for now and beckoned the others to come with her. As the door slammed shut, he was left alone with his spiraling thoughts. Their devotion felt like an impossibly heavy burden. He couldn't let them carry him like this. It wasn't right to let his companions' futures be tied to his own recovery. He couldn't let their party meet a pathetic end because of him. Clenching his fists, he realized he had to be able to stand on his own. His mind conjured an image of his party walking together. Himself, Atri, Eurytia, and Loyald. He reflected that even if this world was like one from a story, his companions were irreplaceable and precious. He acknowledged that they had reached the tragic conclusion of that original tale, but because of that, he was now determined to seize a happy future for all of them. Returning to the present, he knew that remaining helpless would only be a mental and emotional burden on his friends. He had to become self-sufficient again, and soon. His hand tightened into a fist as his resolve hardened. He stared ahead, his expression resolute. He couldn't remain a burden. He vowed to change everyone's future, to rewrite their story into a happy one. His first step would be simple. Muscle training he could perform while still in bed. His ultimate goal was clear, to fully recover and rejoin the world. Outside a small church, Waka strains to perform push-ups, his body trembling with the effort. Hat Girl sits nearby, watching him with a neutral expression. After a great struggle, he manages a single repetition before collapsing onto the ground. He grits his teeth in frustration, acknowledging that his body has grown dull from a long period of inactivity. Though he has resolved to reintegrate into society, he realizes the path to recovery will be a difficult one. Getting to his feet, he tells Hat Girl that he can't simply lie in bed all the time and intends to start training again, little by little. She seems to understand. At that moment, the blonde woman opens the door, announcing her presence as she enters. She has brought a wet towel for Waka, who thanks her. He then notices Eurytia is with her, carrying a sword. Eurytia cheerfully announces that she and Atri are going monster hunting. The blonde woman asks Eurytia to look after Waka in her stead, and Eurytia enthusiastically accepts the responsibility. She turns to Waka with a brilliant smile, assuring him that she will earn enough for his share too, so he can rest easy. He looks on, slightly flustered by her earnest declaration. After they depart, Waka remains kneeling, contemplating his situation. He is a man being financially supported by a young girl, while he does nothing but lie in bed. He clenches his fist, muttering the word rehabilitation and steeling his resolve. The scene shifts to a wide, forested valley. Deep within the woods, a booted foot steps firmly on the ground as someone runs through the trees. A young, red-haired adventurer finds himself beset by two large, wolf-like beasts. He curses his misfortune, realizing this wasn't supposed to happen. He had only intended to fight the weakest monsters to get a feel for things. Suddenly, he spots Eurytia in the distance. Without hesitation, he breaks away from his own fight and sprints towards her, calling out. As he closes the distance, his eyes widen in alarm. He shouts out to the girl, noticing the menacing shadow of another beast looming directly behind her. The adventurer lunges forward, his hand outstretched as he shouts a desperate warning for the girl to run. But the massive, wolf-like beast is already upon her. Before his warning even registers, a blur of motion intercepts the attack. A different woman, the blonde master, appears in a flash, her blade already slicing through two of the monsters, which erupt in dark sprays of blood. He can only stare, utterly stunned. The felled beast crashed to the forest floor. The young adventurer remains frozen, his mind struggling to process the sudden, lethal efficiency he just witnessed. Sheathing her sword, the woman turns to him and apologizes, asking if the monsters were his intended prey, explaining that they appeared so suddenly she had to act. Flustered, he bows his head and insists the apology should be his, admitting he hadn't noticed the danger at all. She offers a polite smile, informing him that since she dealt with the creatures, she will be leaving now. She advises him to be careful on his way and generously offers him the spoils from the kill. As she turns and walks away, he realizes with a start that he should have at least asked for her name. He can only watch as her figure recedes into the woods. Her composure dissolves once she is alone. Her thoughts turn inward, a storm of self-criticism. She feels she isn't good enough, that her skills are lacking. She thinks of her senpai, believing she is too weak to protect him and must become stronger. A memory of her own desperate struggle against a beast flashes in her mind. She continues to reflect on her senpai's incredible power, recalling a new sword technique he possesses that she had never witnessed before. The memory fills her with awe. An image of him solidifies in her mind, a swordsman with long, dark hair, drawing his blade with divine, unforgiving speed. It was this very technique that, in a single flash, vanquished the being known as the Harvester right before her eyes. The memory is reflected in her determined gaze. A single swordsman pushed beyond all limits to open the way. And yet, despite witnessing this feat, a feeling of inadequacy lingers. She blames herself for what happened. If only she hadn't triggered that teleportation trap in the dungeon, they never would have encountered the harvester. It was all her fault. She believes that if she had acted differently, her senpai would not have lost an eye and a leg. The memory flashes back to that moment. Her younger self watching in horror as his leg is severed. The memory continues to unfold, showing him locked in combat with a monstrous, mantis-like creature. She laments that her foolish failure has stolen the future from the world's most beloved swordsman, a man whose blade was destined to reach an unprecedented realm. As her younger self watched his severed limb dissolve into nothingness, a single resolve formed in her mind. She had to become stronger. That resolve hardens in the present. She remembers how, at that time, she could do nothing but watch as he threw his life on the line. She realizes she must become stronger, not just for herself, but to be worthy of being his disciple, to inherit his swordsmanship, and to ensure his legacy endures. Her determination twists into something more intense. She vows to protect the one she loves, to never let anyone hurt him again. And for that to happen, she concludes with a chilling certainty. Her senpai must entrust his entire being to her.